Monroe County Historical Museum presents Monroe County Memories. Hello, and welcome to Monroe County Memories. My name is Judy Hetrick, and I'm the executive producer of this show, which we do for the Monroe County Historical Museum. We have a special treat for you today, put together by one of our most faithful volunteers, Richard Hyde. You've probably heard people complain, "Oh, there's nothing for young people to do in this town." Well, Richard has discovered that well-known organized activities for youth have a long and proud history here in Monroe County. Here's his story.
Great Britain. The year was 1900. The Empire rejoiced in a newfound peace. British General Lord Baden-Powell returned from the Boer War in South Africa a hero. He soon turned his varied talents toward the social problems of industrial, urban England. Youth work had been a long-term interest of his, and Baden-Powell had begun pulling together a radically new educational concept. But he had to try out his idea first. In 1907, he gathered a group of London boys on a small island in the English Channel. There, he taught them to build shelter, gather food, everything required to create a self-sufficient little community. In 1908, Baden-Powell published his now proven ideas in a slender book called Scouting for Boys. The book, which taught self-help skills, derived from Baden-Powell's experience as a military scout. It quickly became a smash hit among English youth. The wild success of the book intrigued Baden-Powell into what was to be the great work of his life, the development of the World Scouting Movement. Baden-Powell saw the potential of scoutcraft as a unique way of teaching. A somewhat indifferent student in his own school days, the multi-talented Baden-Powell was nevertheless a fierce proponent of education reform. He believed deeply in the ability of young people to become their own professors, learning their lessons directly from nature and in the camaraderie of other youth. He saw beneath the recreational look of scouting to a deeper purpose, a means of improving the total education of youth and the improvement of the national character.
Hi, my name's Jonathan Brown. I'm employed by the Hoosier Trails Council of the Boy Scouts of America. Bloomington and Monroe County are in our 18-county council. We stretch from almost one side of Indiana to the other in south central Indiana. Our council was formed in 1973 by a consolidation of the council that has always been headquartered in Bloomington and the council that was headquartered in Columbus, Indiana. Our council is governed by an executive board made up of local citizens who have a large, diverse background from company presidents to tradesmen and craftsmen. The council executive board then divides our council into districts for ease of administration and hires a scout executive. The scout executive is the chief executive officer of our 18-county council. He in turn hires district executives to serve as the executive officers in each one of our 7 scouting and exploring districts. I'm the district executive for Bloomington and Monroe County. We serve over 45 different scouting units in Monroe County. Last year we served over 2,400 young people with the assistance and dedication of 812 volunteers. It's a large undertaking, but we, all of us that are involved either on the professional side or on the volunteer side of scouting in this area feel that we're doing a terrific service to young people. We hope we are, and it's because of the dedication of volunteers that we're able to do this. I'm going to introduce to you one of these volunteers. He's one of the lead volunteers in our council. His name is Doug Seaborn. He's our council commissioner, and he would like to explain a little bit about the history of our council and scouting in Monroe County and Bloomington, Indiana.
Hi, I'm Doug Seaborn. I'm currently a volunteer with the Hoosier Trails Council, Boy Scouts of America, serving in the capacity as council commissioner. You've heard a little bit of history of the national organization from its founding in 1910, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Boy Scouts of America here in Monroe County in the Bloomington area. Boy Scouting was not very old in the country when scouting did come to Monroe County. 1912, the Presbyterian Church did decide that they'd like to sponsor a troop. So a troop was founded there. But little is known about that very first troop, but it did occur and it grew steadily. Now by 1916, another troop was formed at the First Baptist Church. And then shortly thereafter, Troop 1 was also formed, which met at the Indiana University because the Scoutmaster was the Dean of Students, which was C.E. Edmondson. They held their meetings in a sinkhole that was surrounded with a lot of trees, but during that bad weather it was a little tough to meet there, so they finally met off and on at the Indiana campus in Old Kirkwood Hall. Now, it wasn't long that these troops had started that the men here decided they needed a council to help establish protocol to support the units that existed, with such things such as training and camp facilities, even though a camp had been set up in 1919 for the Boy Scouts of the time. Now, the White River Council became in existence in 1927. One of the first scout execs here was H.R. Jorgensen, and there were several who did precede him throughout the years who made their imprint here in scouting in the White River Council. Now, also one of the things that happened shortly thereafter in 1931 was that the Lost River Council, based in Bedford, also merged with White River Council to create a larger council of 9 counties. But the council office was here in Monroe County in Bloomington. It grew very, very rapidly. Scouting grew exceptionally well. Now also, it was found that 63% of all available youth in the council was rural. So they set up this program that was an intensive program to get rural kids involved in scouting, and it was very, very successful. Also during the same period, in the early 30s, the council was also recognized as being only one of 52 councils in the country that did not lose a troop during the year. They had kept all the troops and had grown, and there is a letter on file that so states that. Now, as it grew, there were other opportunities for scouts. One was Sea Scouting. In 1933, there was a Sea Scout group formed, and they did meet on the lake at Crane, and they were sponsored by the Bloomington Lions Club. Now, they also extended exploring at that point in time to Air Squadron. There was an Air Squadron in 1941 that was founded with 7 members. It was a very popular exploring program during the war. Kids learned to fly, or how to fly. They did not physically fly, but they learned how to do it, how to spot planes, how to determine planes, and how to work on planes. And that was very, very interesting. Also in 1935, it was decided in the council that Cub Scouting should be started for the younger youth. Now, the first Cub Master in the county was Carl Bookwalter, who was the Scout Master, or the Cub Master, at Elms Heights School. And he, of course, worked at Indiana University, and Cub Scouting grew from there. Now, Alpha Phi Omega also formed an Explorer Scout troop in 1936, which helped the older program, because those were kids 15 years of age who kind of outgrown and wanted a little more high adventure. Now, what about camps? The Scout camp, one of the first camps that ever was used was Weimer's Lake near Bloomington, and later they had to use a little property over at Martinsville, but came back to the Wapahani area, which was where the camp was until 1971 when the state highway went through it. Camping has always been very, very popular with Scouts, and no different with any of the here. And they used all the camps they could, including other councils at the time. I'd like to thank you at this time for that, and I'd like to introduce to you Karen Frobish, the exploring executive, who will talk to you a little bit more about current exploring. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Frobish. I'm an exploring executive for Hoosier Trails Council. In addition to traditional scouting, which you've just heard about, we also offer Cub Scouts, which started in the 1930s. This program includes tiger cubs and webelos. Another program we offer is called Exploring. This is for young adults ages 14 to 20, and it's sponsored by businesses to teach them about the careers they're thinking about going into. Exploring is a co-ed program. Also, a co-ed program is called Learning for Life. This takes place on school time, and it's for elementary as well as high school students. This started in the 1980s. Boy Scouts started teaching citizenship and character development through wilderness survival techniques. Now we've expanded into teaching children about the hungry, drug abuse, child abuse, protection and prevention, and literacy. For more information about scouting or exploring in Bloomington, please call 336-6809. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Cheryl Welsh, Assistant Executive Director with Tulip Trace Council of Girl Scouts. Here in Bloomington, Indiana, actually this council serves 12 counties in south central Indiana, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of the Bloomington Council when it first started, about Tulip Trace Council, and about the national organization. First, I think I should say that Girl Scouting started in 1912. It was founded by a woman named Juliet Gordon Lowe. She'd had quite a bit of contact with Lord Baden-Powell, who founded Boy Scouting in England, and came back to America and felt like this was something that would be fun for girls in America to do. So she called her cousin one night in Savannah, Georgia, and announced to her that they were going to start something for all the girls in America. The first troop started in 1912, and it's grown from there to spread across the country. The current population for Girl Scouts of the USA is over 3.5 million members. In all the states, there are 331 Girl Scout councils, and internationally there are Girl Scout troops or Girl Guide troops represented in 118 countries through World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. The national organization is based in New York City and serves, as I said, over 3.5 million girls and adult members. Girl Scouting is for girls who are ages 5 through 17, and adult membership includes women and men, singles and couples. It includes senior citizens, and we're delighted. It's a voluntary organization. We cannot function without volunteer participation. Tulip Trace Council became a council that served 12 counties starting in 1962. And the counties include Bartholomew, Brown, Decatur, Jackson, Jennings, a portion of Johnson, Lawrence, Monroe, Morgan, Orange, Owen, and Scott. But starting in 1924, it was really just the Bloomington Girl Scouts. And the first 4 troops formed at Bloomington High School. In 1929, there was actually the first permanent troop, which was 12 girls, organized by Miss Mary Leary, who was the daughter of the minister of the Presbyterian Church here in Bloomington. In 1931, the local Girl Scouts affiliated with the national organization, and Mrs. Will Scott was the first chair of the community committee. In 1934, there were 94 girls in 4 active troops, and today's standards, that's a pretty good-sized troop. A lot of girls in one troop if there were just 4 troops. And they changed the name of the local council to the Girl Scout Council, and Mrs. R.H. Homestead was the first commissioner. In 1946, the council was incorporated, and a couple of the very involved volunteers at that time included Mrs. Alfred C. Kinsey and Miss Montana Grinstead. In 1943, Mrs. Harry Blewett was the first paid member of the Girl Scout Council. She was a part-time executive secretary. In 1947, Ida Lynn Hersberg was the first executive director. She also worked part-time in Seymour and Martinsville as well. From 1949 to 1950, Margaret Murphy was the full-time executive director. From 1950 to 1951, Marjorie Holterman was the executive director. 1951 to 1953 was Ortha Neff. From 1953 to 55 was Mrs. Leonard Horn. In 1955, Jacqueline Fallis was the executive director. From 1949 through 1972, a fairly long-term person, obviously, Mrs. John Zink was a full-time secretary for the Girl Scout Council. The way the council was funded included help from local clubs and from funds received from the cookie sale. The total expenses in 1935 were $153. The first cookie sale was in 1935 when the girls took the orders for 1,000 packages. Those were homemade cookies and placed in paper bags. And the adult members of the council distributed those cookies door to door from the people to the people who ordered them and collected the money. Starting in 1937, the profit received from the cookie sale was put into a Little House Fund, which is now marked for, or was marked in the 1950s for a Girl Scout camp. In 1937, the council first received financial help from the community chest to the amount of $500. Today, this council is financed by the United Way of Monroe County and 7 other United Ways or United Funds among our 12 counties. Day camping started in 1937 for Brownies and Intermediates meeting together at Cascades Park for only 5 days. Mrs. Kinsey was the camp director and the waterfront director, and she had no camp committee to help her. In 1944, finally, a camp committee was organized, and the camp session extended to 8 days. Starting in 1947, 2 separate day camps were held for Brownies at Cascades, and it was called Happy Day Camp, and the Intermediates went to Morgan Monroe State Forest, and that was called Phoebe Hollow. Mrs. Kinsey remained as Intermediate Camp Director, and the Girl Scout Day Camp has changed now from being just 2 places to 8 day camps operated council-wide with day camp directors, nursing staff program directors, waterfront directors if the facilities are available. As I said, the council was incorporated as Tulip Trace in 1962. Other changes that have happened through the years for Girl Scouting include the fact that in the early days, the girls' recognitions and their badges that they earned focused on housekeeping kinds of skills, canning, killing and plucking chickens, how to keep a clean house, and some first aid kinds of activities. And they did go camping. Today's Girl Scouts do all of these same traditional things, but they're also involved in very contemporary activities from architecture, math, science, and technology activities. We also have a contemporary issues series that focuses on things like preventing youth suicide, preventing teen pregnancy, preventing drug abuse, taking care of the earth, and so on. The Contemporary Issues series is just a small part of the different activities that we offer girls in this council. We have a Joyous Guard program for girls who are considered to be environmentally at risk, and this is assisted by the Monroe County Commissioners as well as the CARES grant. Daisy Girl Scouts are the newest addition to the family, and they started in 1984 for girls who are in kindergarten. The age levels are Brownie Girl Scouts who are in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grades primarily. Junior Girl Scouts are in 4th, 5th, and 6th grades mostly. Cadet Girl Scouts for girls in junior high or middle school. And Senior Girl Scouts for girls who are in high school. The girl age, as I have indicated, is from 5 through 17. To tell you a little bit about the history of camping in Tulip Trace Council, I'd like to have Peggy Wolf-Blackard, who is our executive director, talk to you about the early camping days and today's camping setup for the girls in our Girl Scout Council.
Established camp for girls in Monroe County was first held in McCormick's Creek State Park for 10 days in 1945 for 44 girls. In 1947, established camp was then set up at Wapahani on the southwest side of Bloomington. In 1956, Camp Nawakee in Poland, Indiana was rented from the Sycamore Girl Scout Councils for girls in Monroe County. In 1966, Tulip Trace Council bought property at Bradford Woods Camp Tulip Trace was dedicated on June 5, 1966. The camp was then sold in 1981. Tulip Trace Council bought the Belmont property in March of 1970. At that time, there was a 4-room log cabin on the property. This cabin was built in 1932 by Grover Willoughby for his 10 children and his wife. One son, Grover Dale, died on the homestead when he was 7 years old. Grover used trees from the property, including tulip trees that he cut and drug with a team of mules. He also found a 24-foot log for the ridgepole in the cabin. Other hardwood trees were used for the sides of the cabin. The new house consisted of 4 rooms, 2 large rooms downstairs and 2 rooms upstairs. The 2 rooms upstairs were used for sleeping by all 10 children. The Willoughby family lived at Belmont for 21 years, and in 1948 they sold the Belmont property and moved to Florida for retirement. The Belmont site was purchased by Tulip Trace Council with the intent for it to be and remain a troop campsite and not a residential site. Around 1976, the council added a teepee campsite to the 2 already established platform tent sites in the log cabin. The 1980s were a tremendous time of change for Girl Scouting. Our traditional membership, which were older girls, changed where 90% of our members were below the age of 12. Our adult volunteers became short-term volunteers with more women in the workforce and more single-family homes. In 1988, the Board of Directors appointed a long-range property task force. In 1989, a detailed needs assessment was conducted of our girls, adults, and our leaders. In 1989, a master plan was then developed. In 1990, a feasibility study was conducted. And in 1992, we kicked off our capital campaign for Belmont Outdoor Education Center. And luckily, last September in 1993, we broke ground for our wonderful bridge house at Belmont. We are still working on our capital campaign, and we are going to near completion of the capital campaign and construction later on this fall. Belmont Outdoor Education Center is the only outdoor property owned by Tulip Trace Council and serves over 1,500 girls in Monroe County. Our local number is 336-6804. If you would like additional information, please call the Council Service Center.
My name is Howard Young. I live here in Bloomington, born and raised here in Bloomington. Now, I understand you're all interested in how and when the Boys Club started here in Bloomington. Okay, I was in on the beginning of this. And what happened was, the National Organization of Boys Club of America sent in a person that represented the national organization and ran a survey in Bloomington on, do we need a boys club here? Could we use a boys club here? Now, no one knew about this survey until it was all done, and for a good reason. We always said he came to the Optus Club of Bloomington. We, the Optus Club, had just organized, and we were looking for projects to do for the local community. Well, this representative from Boys Club of America approached the Optus Club of Bloomington and asked us if we would be interested in sponsoring and starting up a boys club here in Bloomington. Well, upon discussion, we decided to take this on as a project for the whole community of Bloomington. So we did. So we went out on different committees that are assigned to go out and raise some money to get us started. So lo and behold, 3 outstanding businessmen here in Bloomington donated $500 each. Now that got us started, see. And then we had to make an organization for the Boys Club. We had to have a president and a board of directors. And for some reason or other, they nominated me and elected me as the first president of the board of directors for the Boys Club of Bloomington. So we started and made all the plans necessary. We had lots of help, community-wise, from everybody we talked to. The only place we could find that was vacant where we could get started was an empty room up above what was formerly the University Sporting Goods store. So in the northeast corner of Walnut and 6th Street. So we advertised the fact that we were starting a boys club here in Bloomington, and we picked out a Saturday to make an enrollment. On Saturday, at 8 o'clock, they started enrolling young men in their teens. And when the day was over, we had registered over 400 young men in their teens to become a member of the Boys Club of Bloomington. For 5 years, I was kept as the president of the board of directors. And for 5 years, we kept growing and growing and getting larger, getting more donations. United Way accepted us in their organization, which made us a success in the community-wise. Then we had sufficient funds to hire full-time people to help us run. From there, a lease ran out. We moved upstairs on East 7th Street, above what is the loan shop, or whatever you call it now. We were up there for a short time, and the Bloomington Armory, where we are at the present time, became available. And through a lot of negotiations, through a lot of political power and everything, we acquired the local armory, where we are right now, as the Boys Club of Bloomington. And that's where we are at the present time. Thank you.
I'm Paul Grudis, the Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club of Bloomington. The Boys and Girls Clubs of America has a very long history. The first Boys Club was founded in Hartford, Connecticut, just before the turn of the Civil War. After that, many more clubs were formed, and in 1906, the first Federation of Boys Clubs was established, and that was the origin of Boys Clubs of America. Our mission originally was to serve boys only, and for many years we did just that. But starting in the early 1970s, many local boys clubs saw a need for serving girls. There were not very many activities and programs for girls in the neighborhoods where we were serving boys. And so the local clubs made the decision to change to a Boys and Girls Club. Then, toward the end of the 1980s, our national organization, in response to the desire of the member organizations, changed its name to Boys and Girls Clubs of America and urged all local clubs to do the same thing, because as a movement, we recognize the needs of girls as well as boys. The Boys and Girls Club of Bloomington became such on May 1st, 1992. The Boys Club changed its name to Boys and Girls Club and admitted girls for the first time on May 1st of 92.
Hello again. We hoped you enjoyed this story about the history of the youth activities in Monroe County. As you can see around me, the museum owns several artifacts that help add to this story of the history of the Scouts and other groups in Monroe County. The museum's always looking for people to help with this show, with guiding people around the museum, and several other volunteer activities. If you would like to become involved, give us a call. Our number is 332-2517. And thank you for joining us on Monroe County Memories.